stories. How did you find out that Santa was not real? Because Keelan reckons he's got a good story, and I feel like everyone has a good story about this. I don't, and I was thinking about why. I don't really I don't think I remember like finding out that he wasn't real. And if anyone's like 4 or 5, he is real. To all of our toddler listeners, I said that he's real. But I don't think I have a memory of finding out Santa. There's a few memories that you have as a kid that are like, oh my God, my world's changed. I feel like that's like Santa realizing your parents are like humans. They're not like mom and dad. They're just like people who are also your parents. They're not like these figures. They become actual people who used to be children. That's like a big thing of like, oh, fuck, dad doesn't know everything. He's just a bloke, right? I love him, but he is just a bloke. Just like I'm just a bloke. How weird. That blows your mind. Same thing, teachers. You find out that teachers are people. Mm-hmm. You see a teacher at the shops. You're like, what the fuck? Mr. Richards goes to IGA? I thought he was just in the school and was a teacher. He's wearing a T-shirt and shorts. What the fuck? And finding out what porn is. And sex. That's another one. I remember my sex thing, because we talked about the first time I watched porn last episode. I've told that story, but because I was thinking about my world-changing moments as a kid, and I remember we were behind the sheds at school, and one kid was like, do you guys know what sex is? We were in primary school. I was like, no. And he goes, this is how babies are made. Penis and vagina, and they do this. And I was like, what the fuck? And there were like 10 of us, all boys, going, no way. Nah, bull. Gross. Right? But I don't have that memory of Santa not being real. And I think it's because I'm an older brother. Because at the time I was becoming too old to believe in Santa, my brother was in his prime Santa years. So instead of like finding out that it's not real, I was instead brought into the conspiracy, and I was made to assist. Because I do remember we would leave out beer and cookies and for Santa, and a glass of milk for his reindeer. Dad just wanted an excuse to have a VB on like a Sunday night before Christmas, you know. So we did all of that, but I don't ever remember stopping believing. I just remember helping mum and dad keep it going for a while. But you reckon you've got a funny story of how you found out?
Yes. So if you remember the early 2000s, all the big shops like Kmart, Target, Big W were doing a big campaign of like, don't touch your gifts, don't look at your gifts, the elves are watching.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Big campaign. And I just never liked it. It always felt wrong to me. Yeah. As a 5-year-old, I was like, well, this isn't right. And so I started asking lots of questions like, well, what if I set up a camera to take a photo of Santa?
Yeah.
All these things. Mm-hmm. And I was becoming paranoid about Santa.
Yeah.
So I conveniently had like lost a tooth. I was about probably 5 or 6.
Oh, so you're still in tooth fairy age as well.
Yeah. And the tooth fairy didn't make sense to me because my mum stopped letting us put teeth under our pillow. We had to put it in a glass next to our bed.
My mum did that too.
Yeah.
Lazy bitch.
Yeah.
Don't wake me up. What, you're not sneaky?
So, anyway, one day...
Probably because after the first tooth, you woke up and she was like, fuck, I have to try again.
I've put my tooth in a glass before school.
Yeah.
And I've kind of walked out to my mum and stepped down and gone, my tooth is in the glass. I'm going to get ready for school now.
Yeah.
And then I hid under the bed.
Oh, nice.
And then 2 minutes later, my stepdad walks in and just drops a $2 coin in the glass.
Come on, Dad, don't drop it. Yeah. Dropping it from a height so it goes ding. Oh, look, there's a bloody coin in there, mate.
And then from there, I just knew that it was all fake. It was all made
bullshit.
Up.
Oh, so everything, the whole conspiracy, Santa,
everything,
the tooth fairy, everything.
The Easter Bunny.
Yeah, the Easter Bunny. It's all bullshit. It's a scam to keep us hopeful, to keep us under the thumb of control. Keelan was the original QAnon kid.
And I reckon I went to school. I remember saying to someone in like the computer lab, Santa's not real. And this is how I know.
I've got proof. Yeah, you're one of those kids. I think my girl, she was the kid that... blew it with sex ed. right? Because I think her older brother had sex ed, right? But she was much younger. And obviously her parents made the correct decision of like, well, if the older brother knows all this stuff, he's going to tell the kids. So we should tell all the kids all at once. Jazz goes immediately at like 6 years old to the Christian school and tells all the kids how babies are made and what sex is and condoms and this. And you actually don't need to be married. Casual sex is something that exists. And apparently their family were just getting irate calls from parents for weeks afterwards because it spread throughout the entire school. And all these kids who never would have been allowed to attend a sex education meeting by the school were being taught by Jazz. It was like 6, which is really good. So you know what? That's actually a great. How about let's broaden it away from, because you might not be listening to this on Christmas. What are some like mind-blowing moments for you as a kid? Like I feel like everyone's is like when you find out what sex is, when you find out what porn is, when you watch like when you find out swear words. That was a huge one. I remember that. When you find out that you can just say them and you're like, oh my God, nothing happens. When you find out teachers are people, your parents are people. Yeah, man, there's got to be a bunch of other like childhood defining, mind blowing moments. Write them in the comments and we'll put a little thing on Spotify as well. I'd love to hear yours. We'll read them on the next episode of the show. There's got to be heaps that I'm not even thinking of. Do you have any others that you can think of from that just made your like 5-year-old brain go, what the fuck?
Not that I can think of. I know high school, the first time I wagged and there were no consequences.
Yeah, that's
was
a huge
nuts.
one. When nothing happened. And also, I feel like when I first did it, you kind of think that like just the general public is going to see you out of school and go, hey, why aren't you at school? But they just don't ever. And you're like, oh, you can just like leave school and even if you do get caught, nothing really happens. In my year 11 and 12, I would wag fucking all the time, just periods and classes I didn't want to go to. I'd be like, oh, I actually don't have to do anything. I can do whatever I want, basically.
Yeah. I have a good story about this. When I was doing my exchange, I went to a high school in America for a whole year. And in the last like 2 months of being there, I had this shit engineering class.
Yeah.
But I'd already taken a version in Australia, so I was just repeating the same content.
Yeah.
And so I told the teacher, I was like, hey, I go back to Australia in a few weeks. I'm just going to stop coming to your class. I told him it was like 2 weeks away. This is months before I left. And so for months, he wasn't reporting me as absent. He was reporting me as present because he knew that I'd already told him.
Yeah.
But he thought it was only a couple days that I wasn't going to be there.
Yeah, right. But he just kept doing it.
The new school year starts.
Yeah.
And then we ran into each other in the library. And he was like, I thought you were going back to Australia. I was like,
I did.
I will be.